Hello, friends. I'm David Pasqualone, and welcome to this episode with our good friend Gene Valentino. If you haven't checked out the episode on how can everything be falling apart in America, yet the stock market be at a high, go check that out. But continuing it, you can get all Gene's credentials in that episode, or actually just some of them, and you can also get all his credentials on his website, genevalentino.com. Check out the show notes. But in this episode, Gene's going to help us understand. I had someone tell me Biden is doing an excellent job. Look at the unemployment rate. It's back to where it was pre-COVID. Now, my face is about to lose it, and I'm about to laugh audibly. So I'm going to shut up and let Gene, please explain to us unemployment and how we can have people could say that unemployment's back to where it was pre-COVID and help us to get out of the fast guy and the slow reading group syndrome.
The unemployment is not back to pre-COVID. In fact, most people are still enjoying an allocation from government and making it miserable for employers to try to find good labor, because it's easier for many to stay home. Many of our service industries that need hardworking individuals have been disrupted by this government intervention of stimulus dollars because of an alleged scheme that is ill-founded called the COVID Wuhan virus. And it's a subtle way of a virus being used from a Chinese lab by Democrat liberals in Congress of stifling, of creating an element of fear. I call it fear porn. Fear porn. It's a way of getting people stoked on with so much fear. I mean, they're masking up and they're running around in fear of their life and their health, and they're not. And it's the beginning of what Hitler did during the Nazi regime in causing such panic and fear amongst the societal base that they were shepherded like weak sheep into corrals for slaughter. And that's what's about to happen to us as a society if we don't step out, maintain our individuality, complain about the way our teachers are teaching in the schools, and promote our representatives in Congress to create economic stimulus for businesses to advance themselves so that my boss can keep me on the job at work, not say he can't afford me. While it's true that maybe the minimum wage should have come up, the level it's come up to will radically affect all service industry and cause our pricing to now have to be adjusted, which means fewer of us can afford those same services that we were paying for before. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify and circle back, I and Gene, I don't want to speak for you, we're not here to pick a political party. We're here to support truth and reason so our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, for generations to come, will be able to live in the greatest country that's ever existed on this planet. Right now, the Democratic Party, the leadership, all the way from the top to the bottom, is almost completely corrupt. And you have the Republicans, which I have issues with a lot of Republicans, but when you have people like Donald Trump in office, he was making good decisions. I don't care about his personality. I don't care about those issues. I care about his morality. And Donald Trump was making good decisions on the economic, on the sociological, on the religious side. He was making good decisions for America to thrive. So when someone says unemployment is back to pre-COVID levels, I personally laugh, because number one, that's not a true statement. Number two, Democrats were the ones bitching how bad it was when Donald Trump was in office. That would be pre-COVID if you do math, which I know government has a hard time doing. Then you have people timing out of the system because they've absorbed all the money. And you know more business owners than I do, but I talked to 2 business owners this week. One is a painting contractor in business over 40 years. One is a contractor. over 30 years in business. And they're both like, we're shutting our doors because we can't get labor and we're tired of all the chaos.
And those labor numbers, David, do not include the 3 million illegal migrants that have come into this country since the border crisis began during the same COVID era, these last 2.5, 3 years. Admittedly, the border crisis preceded that period of time as well. But when you add in those undocumented workers who are not necessarily citizens yet, you have created an even bigger complication. Mm-hmm. And so there is a hidden economy developing from a whole level of workforce that hasn't been properly reported. So to answer your question, the statistic is even worse. The solution, the 28th Amendment. We talked about it before. The 28th Amendment, you'll hear on my website, genevalentino.com. It's referred to in one of the podcasts we've done.
I'll put a link in the show notes if you're interested to learn more.
Thank you. And that 28th Amendment really says before you can legitimately vote as an American citizen, you must become, illegitimately vote, you must become an American citizen under a certain criteria. And in the 28th Amendment I propose, it's defined. It clearly lays out what an American citizen is, naturalized, or what the criteria is to become one. And that citizen is entitled to a precious right we take for granted, the right to vote. And that right to vote cannot be squandered, as New York is trying to do right now. Do you know you don't even need to show identification to vote in New York?
It's disgusting.
We have to vote. We have to show identification to get a bottle of beer, to drive a car. We have all sorts of registration and identification procedures we go through. But to vote, New York is trying to allow a person to vote that does not need to show any identification. It's a desperate grab by the Democratic Party and these illegal and these the reckless left people that are trying to buy votes from the poor folks coming into this country. My father and mother were Democrats. I'm not anxious to say anything bad about a Democrat, but the Democratic Party today is not the Democratic Party it was.
No.
In fact, in many cases, especially in the South, the Dixiecrats or the Dixie Democrats were considered even more conservative than some of the people who think they're conservative Republicans. I mean, the Dixie Democrats have disappeared. Moderates and progressives is what you hear as sort of the middle of the road in the Democratic Party today. It always trickles back to politics because they're the ones setting the policy, and they're the ones that you voted into office. If you want to fix the problem, we got to get to the source of the problem. And the source of the problem, whether Democrat or Republican, as David says, is to put people into office who are using common sense based on the way we asked them to vote. We asked them to represent us. The problem, though, Dave, and this is true, they may, that Dave, he's a nice guy. I think I'm going to vote for him. But when you get into office and you get through the doors of Congress, you are consumed by a cabal, a hidden club of people that are now transforming your good intentions into supporting the lobbyists of big pharma, big tech, big industry that helps protect the few and nurture and make wealthy the few at the expense of the many.
Yes.
And therein is our problem. When you go into office as my elected official, do you have the balls to stand up for what you first said you were going to do and do it? Will be your challenge. Whether it's an unemployment issue, whether it's incentives to work for industry, whether it's the legislation involved in how we become an American citizen, whether it's the legislation involved in how we vote, whether it's we do what we're supposed to do and protect our borders, Are we providing a system? My grandparents were Italian immigrants.
Me too.
And my grandfather said to my father, you tell that young boy, I was 8 years old then, you tell that young boy to serve his country. But Pop, I want him to learn Italian. I want him to know all the Italian culture. My grandfather, an Italian immigrant who could barely read and write, says, never mind all that stuff. This is America. I nearly lost my life getting over here to have this way of life for my father. You, my son, he said. The least you could do is let him become a good American citizen. Yep. What happened to those principles that were taught to me by my grandfather, an immigrant? That's why we say we're a nation of immigrants. Yep. There's nothing wrong with immigrants becoming American citizens. But for crying out loud, would you do it legally?
Yeah. And when we open the borders, you're opening your brain, you're opening your mind so wide your brain's falling out, because the majority of people come over illegally are bad people doing bad things, sex trafficking, drugs. I mean, there's not like the picture perfect person they're bringing over.
That's right.
Gene's family, my family, probably your family came over the right way. And listen, I challenge you a simple challenge. The Constitution isn't an encyclopedia. It's a very small document, not that hard to read. Read it. Because if you actually read the Constitution and see how the founding fathers were given wisdom by God because they gave reverence to God, you'll understand a lot more. It's not conspiracy theory what's going on in America right now. It's a conspiracy for these crazy Marxist liberals to take over a republic.
That's the select few that are trying to succeed at the expense of the many, you and me. So them's the apples, as they say.
That's the apple. So we went deeper than unemployment, but basically anytime a stat's put out, look at who's putting the stat. Is it real? Is it fake? That ain't a real stat. Unemployment is terrible. We're being leached by society. And if you are on the system and need it, that's okay. That's what it's there for. But if you're leeching it, you're part of the problem. Go get a job.
Well, you talked about how easy it is to read the Constitution. It is. The base body document plus the 27 amendments. The first 10, of course, are the Bill of Rights, and those that follow up to 27 are the amendments to the Constitution. But I would ask you, as I asked before, please look at the 28th Amendment to the Constitution, and that is this concept of citizenship and voting rights. And I challenge you to read it, and I welcome, you can reach me through www.genevalentino.com. Thank you, David, for posting that.
Oh, thank you.
The 28th Amendment is something I'd like you to to buy into and then talk up with your representatives in Congress.
That's it for this episode, folks. Have a great day. Go love God, your family, your country, and let us know if we can help.
Thanks,
Ciao.
guys.